Madhurya Kadambini, a cloud bank of nectar. First shower of nectar, pre-eminence of bhakti. Text for Part C, giving in charity, executing vows, and so forth result in attaining bhakti in the mode of goodness. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. In answer to this, it is said that where charity, vows, and so on are described as the cause of attaining bhakti, it is to be understood that it refers only to bhakti in the mode of goodness, which arises as an attribute of jnana. Jnanang-bhūt sattviki bhakti. It does not refer to devotion beyond the material modes, which arises as an attribute of prema, that is, prema-anga-bhūta nirguna bhakti. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Again, Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11.12.9 states, Yam na yogena sankhena dana vrata tapoadhvare vyakhya swadhyaya sannyaseh prapnuyad yatnavanamapi. It means, bhakti is not attained through even the greatest of efforts in mysticism, that is yoga, analysis of the elements, that is sankhya, philosophical speculation, that is jnana, charity, that is dan, saintly vows, that is vrata, austerity, that is tapasya, authorized rituals, that is yagna, deliberation upon scriptures, that is shastra vyakhya, study of the Vedas, that is swadhyaya, or acceptance of the renounced order of life, that is sannyasa, and so on. This verse clearly indicates that other than by receiving the mercy of great souls, that is Mahat Kripa, such practices as mysticism and analysis of the elements cannot result in the awakening of bhakti. While Śrīmad Bhagavatam so clearly refutes this, it also states in 10.47.24, Dāna vrata tapo homa japa swadhyaya sanyameh Shreyobhir vividdaischanyah Krishner bhaktir hi sadhyate. It means, through clarity, saintly vows, austerity, authorized rituals, chanting mantras, study of the Vedas, self-restraint, and other activities performed to generate good fortune, Krishna bhakti is achieved. In this verse, charity, saintly vows, and so on are listed as practices or sadhana for attaining bhakti, but these activities have been mentioned in relation to bhakti in the mode of goodness, which is an attribute of jnana, that is jnana anga-bhūt sattviki bhakti. They do not relate to transcendental bhakti, which is an attribute of prema, that is prema anga-bhūt nirguna bhakti, or to eternally perfected transcendental devotion, that is swarup siddha bhakti. In Śrīmad Bhagavatam, prior to describing the symptoms of transcendental devotion to his mother, Devahuti, Bhagwan Sri Kapiladeva sets out the symptoms of bhakti in the mode of goodness, sattviki bhakti, while also describing the symptoms of bhakti performed with material desires, that is sakama bhakti, or in other words, bhakti mixed with the modes of nature, that is sagun bhakti. Karma nirharam uddishya parasmin va tadarpanam yajed yashtavyamiti va pritak bhavaha sa sattvikaha. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 3.29.10. It means, those in the mode of goodness, that is sattvik bhaktas, worship me, the Supreme Lord, to dissipate their sins and to dedicate to me the fruits of their pious action, karma. They do so with the intelligence that worshipping the Lord is their duty, and they are desirous of moksha, not bhakti. Bhakti is the natural tendency or vritti of Sri Bhagwan's internal potency or Swarupa Shakti. Actually, at no time is bhakti in the mode of goodness or in any of the modes of material nature. Bhakti is transcendental to the material modes, that is nirguna. But by willingly accepting subordination to jnana, bhakti becomes a limb of jnana or jnana angabhuta and grants liberation to the jnanis. It is for this reason that bhakti has been called sattviki bhakti. Some people cultivate jnana to obtain liberation or mukti, but jnana is in no way competent to give liberation without the assistance of bhakti. For this reason, the jnanis, in order to obtain liberation, perform bhakti to Bhagwan. The verse under consideration, which begins Dan Vrata Tapohoma, mentions this bhakti in the mode of goodness, which is an attribute of jnana or jnana angabhuta sattviki bhakti, and not śuddha-bhakti, which grants prema. Text 4 D. Giving in charity, executing vows and so forth for the sake of Bhagwan results in attaining prema bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. Alternatively, some explain dana to mean charity aimed at service to Sri Vishnu and the Vaishnavas, vrata to mean vows such as Ekadashi, and tapasya to mean the renunciation of sense gratification with the intention of obtaining Bhagwan, and that they are described as limbs of sadhan bhakti. It has been explained that the goal of all these limbs of bhakti is bhakti. Bhaktya sanjayataya bhaktya, that is, prema bhakti is produced by sadhan bhakti. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11.3.31. This aphorism, which establishes the causeless nature of bhakti, perfectly reconciles all the statements of scripture. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Again, certain individuals have interpreted dana or charity, vrata or vows, tapasya or austerities, homa or oblations of ghee into fire, and other components of this verse as limbs of śuddha-bhakti. In Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura's Sārartha-darshini commentary on this Bhagavatam verse 10.47.24, he writes, here, dana refers to giving charity to Vishnu and the Vaishnavas for the purpose of serving them. Vrata refers to Vaishnava vows like observing Ekadashi. The meaning of tapasya is renunciation of enjoyment for the sake of Sri Krishna's pleasure. The word homa refers to Vaishnava homa, or else offering the Lord's food remnants and so on to the Vaishnavas. Japa refers to the uttering of Vishnu mantra, Gayatri, and so on. Swadhyaya refers to the reading of Shruti, such as Gopal Tapni. In this way, by the word Shreya or supreme welfare, the other aggregate limbs of bhakti should be understood. Charity and so on performed for any other purpose can never be the cause of bhakti. Certainly, this has already been fully established. Thus, by conclusively establishing the transcendental nature of bhakti, there is a full and beautiful reconciliation. Text 5. Part A of Text 5. In the absence of bhakti, practices like jnana, karma and yoga are fruitless. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. Shreya Shritim Bhaktim Udasyate Vibho. O Lord, devotional service to you is the main source of all kinds of auspiciousness. Those who give up this path just to cultivate jnana will simply undergo hard work, suffer pain, and experience difficulty. Just as a person who beats empty husks is rewarded with hard work only, not rice. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10.14.4. Ko vārtha apto bhajatam sva dharmataha. Even by fully engaging oneself in one's prescribed occupational duties, if such engagement is devoid of Bhagavad Bhakti, one does not gain anything. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 1.5.17. Pure bhuman bhavo api yoginaha. O Almighty Lord, in the past, many yogis in this world, unable to attain you through the path of yoga, finally offered all their endeavors to you. As a result, they achieve bhakti characterized by hearing and chanting about you. They therefore came to understand you and attained the supreme destination in the form of samipya, or being situated near you. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:14-5. By scriptural statements such as these, it is evident that bhakti is surely relied upon to obtain the cherished fruits of karma, yoga, jnana, and so on. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura, having established the self-manifesting nature of bhakti, now elucidates topics such as the dependence on bhakti of other practices like karma, jnana, and yoga. He also describes bhakti's quality of independence and bhakti as the sole and essential life air of various other practices. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:14-4 states, Shreya sritim bhakti mudasya te vibho klishyanti ye keval bodhalabdhaye teshamaso kleshal eva shishyate na anyad yatha sthula tushāvaghatinam. Beholding of Sri Krishna's astonishing influence, Sri Brahma is uttering words of praise. O Bhagwan, whosoever abandons bhakti, the soul means to obtain complete auspiciousness, just for the sake of obtaining exclusive jnana, will simply undergo hard work, suffer pain, and achieve difficulty, just as the only gain of a person who beats empty husks is hard work, not rice. In Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura's Śrīla commentary on verse 1855 of Śrīmad Bhagavad Gita, beginning Bhaktya Mam Abhijananti, he has mentioned 4 kinds of practitioners who cultivate exclusive jnana or Brahma jnana. First, those people who think that jnana alone, devoid of bhakti, is competent to give mukti except profuse turbulation in their practice of cultivating jnana. In a sense, what they attain is turbulation and turbulation alone. Such people are greatly condemned. The verse previously discussed, Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:14-4, comments on these jnanis. Second, then there are those who practice jnana that is mixed with bhakti, that is, bhakti mishra jnana. Upon seeing the scriptural passage, Sarvasham eva siddhinam moolam tatcharana archanam. The worship of Sri Krishna's lotus feet is the root of the perfection of all kinds of sadhana. After enormous turbulation, such persons reach the stage of absorption in abstract meditation. But because they consider Sri Bhagwan's divinely graceful form to be a temporary manifestation of Maya, they become offenders at his lotus feet. As a result, they become degraded and cheated out of obtaining mukti. Such people are condemnable among jnanis. In Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:32, it has been said, Ye anye arvindaksha vimuktamaninas tvaya asat bhavad avishuddha-buddhaya aruya krichena param padam tataha patanti yadho anadrit yushmad angriyaha. In a Garbha Stotra, or prayers by the demigods to Sri Krishna in the womb, the demigods headed by Brahma are praising Sri Krishna as follows. O lotus-eyed one! Impure is the intelligence of those who, disregarding your divinely graceful lotus feet, believe themselves to be liberated, for such persons have no bhakti to you. Although they ascend to a state of liberation in this life, that is Jivana Mukta, as a result of excruciatingly burdensome practices, they again fall down into disgracefulness. Number 3. And there are those among the guild of jnanis who practice jnana mixed with bhakti or bhakti mishra jnana and consider the form of Sri Bhagwan to be comprised of eternality, cognizance and bliss, that is Satchidananda. They alone, upon dispelling worldly knowledge and nescience and gaining indirect knowledge related to the absolute reality, obtain liberation of merging into the Lord's effulgence, that is, Brahma Sayujya. Such people are somewhat laudable. Number 4. There is a fourth type of jnani. This type of jnani is supremely fortunate. While cultivating jnana, personalities like Śrīla Śukadeva Gosvāmī obtained by the mercy of Bhagwan the association of Mahabhagavata. By the influence of the association of that Mahabhagavata, they were rescued from the inclination to achieve mukti and became blissfully immersed in tasting the sweetness of bhakti rasa. Such jnanis are exceedingly laudable. Thus, it is most apparent that all jnani sādhakas depend immensely on the bhakti in order to obtain perfection. Now, the karmi's reliance on bhaktis will be described. Tyaktva swadharmam charanambujam harer bhajan apakvo ath patet tato yadi yatra kva va bhadram abhudamushyakim ko varth apto abhajitam swa dharmataha. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 1:5-17. Devarishi Narad is saying to a disheartened Sri Vyasadeva, O Muni, how can any harm come to those who, giving up their prescribed and occasional duties in Varnashram Dharma, perform bhajan of Sri Hari's divinely graceful lotus feet and then fall spiritually before their bhajan has fully matured? There can never be inauspiciousness for them, but what is to be obtained by those who do not perform bhajan or bhakti to Bhagwan, and who simply discharge their prescribed and occasional duties in Varnashram Dharma, or 4 social divisions and spiritual orders of life? For them, there is no gain at all. The purport is that if prior to obtaining Bhagwan, a bhakti sādhaka passes away, becomes ill, or for any number of reasons happens to discontinue his bhajan or even go astray, there is no loss for him at all, nor does any misfortune befall him. On the other hand, for a person who neglects performing bhakti to Bhagwan and remains absorbed until the end of his life in the discharge of regular prescribed duties as well as occasional duties such as the performance of charity, religious vows, and austerity, there is nothing to be gained at all. After enjoying fleeting and precarious happiness on heavenly planets and the like, such a person again plummets into samsara, the cycle of birth and death in the material world. Without Bhagavad Bhakti, his vows, the discharging of his prescribed duties, and so on, all go entirely in vain. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 22.26 affirms this. Chari varnashrami yadi Krishna nahi bhaje, swa karma kaurite se raurave padi maje. If those in the 4 social divisions and spiritual orders of life do not perform bhajan of Sri Krishna, then, even though they have faithfully carried out the prescribed duties of these divisions and orders, they fall into the hell known as Raurava. Thus, yoga, karma, and so on are not at all effective without bhakti. To indicate this, Lord Brahma says, Pureh bhuman behvo api yoginas tvad arpiteha nij karma labdhaya vibhudya bhaktiyeva katho panitaya prapayadire anjo achyut te gatim param. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:14-5. O infallible, infinite and limitless One, when, in previous times, many yogis on this planet found themselves incapable of obtaining knowledge of you through yoga, they eventually fully offered the results of all their worldly and Vedic actions at your divinely graceful lotus feet. By fully offering the results of their actions, as well as by the influence of bhakti born of listening with relish to descriptions of your pastimes, they became aware of Atma Tattva, the truth of the soul, and your Swarupa Tattva, the truth of your intrinsic nature, and happily obtained the supreme destination, your lotus feet. 5b. Bhakti is not dependent on any other process. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. Not even in one's wildest dreams does bhakti rely on karma, yoga, jnana, and so on to bestow her own fruit, namely prema. But na jnanam na cha vairagyam preha shreyo bhaved iha. That is, for a person endowed with bhakti to me, the cultivation of knowledge and renunciation is not considered the means to achieve the highest perfection within this world. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11, 20, 31. Furthermore, Sri Bhagwan says, Dharman samtajya yashravan mam bhajet sacha sattamaha. That is, he who has abandoned all dharma or ordinary religious duties and performs exclusive bhajan of me is considered to be the best of all living entities. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11, 11, 32. Statements such as this certainly establish bhakti's non-dependence on anything in every respect. Not only this, even when she grants the fruits of practicing jnana, karma, yoga, and so on, she is not even faintly dependent on them to do so. In other words, she personally grants the fruits of such practices without their assistance. Evidence of this is found in Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11, 20, 32 and 33. Yat karmabhir yat tapasa gyan vairagya tascha yat. And further in 33, Sarvam mad bhakti yogena mad bhakto labhate anjasa. Whatever fruit is obtained through auspicious practices such as fruitive activities, karma, austerity, tapasya, knowledge, jnana, and renunciation, vairagya, my bhaktas easily achieve simply by performing bhakti yoga to me. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura is saying that one cannot even dream that bhakti relies upon jnana, yoga, karma, and so on to bestow her own fruit of Krishna prema, whereas the karmis, jnanis, and yogis fully rely on bhakti to attain the fruit of their practices. What to say of bhakti relying on anything else by the mere touch of the above-mentioned jnana, karma, and so on? Bhakti's sanctity is tainted. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11, 20, 31 states, Tasman mad bhakti yuktasya yogino vai mad atmanaha na jnanam na cha vairagyam preha shreyo bhavet iha. Bhagwan Shri Krishna is saying to Uddhava, for a devotee who is endowed with bhakti to me and whose consciousness is situated in me, the cultivation of jnana, vairagya, and so on are generally not considered the means of attaining the highest auspiciousness within this world. Bhakti is transcendental to material qualities and she is independent. She does not rely on anything, whereas jnana, vairagya, etc. rely on bhakti. Without bhakti, they cannot bestow any fruit. Even though the devotee of Bhagwan does not desire them, they pursue a person with bhakti. Jnana vairagya adi bhaktir kabhau nay anga amsha yam niyamadi bhule Krishna bhakta sanga. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 22, 1, 45. Paths such as jnana and vairagya are never limbs of bhakti. Indeed, good qualities such as non-violence and control of the mind and senses automatically follow a Krishna Bhakta. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 1, 2, 7 states that Bhakti Devi alone rapidly awakens pure Vedic knowledge and Yukta Vairagya or renunciation in the spirit of devotion. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janyatyashu vairagyam jnanam chayat ahetukam. After hearing Śrīmad Bhagavatam, a faithful person automatically acquires bhakti endowed with knowledge and renunciation. By such bhakti, he realizes Bhagwan's Swarupa in his heart and he realizes his relationship with Bhagwan. Thus, he obtains service to him. In his commentary on this verse, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura says, Jnana vairagya artham prithak yatno bhakterna kartavya iti bhavaha. Devotees ought not to separately endeavor for jnana and vairagya. The instruction is given to fully renounce varnashrama and so forth, and exclusively perform Bhagavad bhajan. Agya evam gunan doshan maya adhishtan api swakan dharman santyajya yashravan mam bhajet satu sattamaha. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11:11-32. O Uddhava, I have given instructions on the dharma of mankind. Having considered the favorable and unfavorable aspects of such duties, one who renounces the inclination to perform such ordinary religious duties and instead exclusively performs bhajan of me is in fact the best among mankind. Furthermore, in concluding the Gita, Bhagwan Shri Krishna says to Arjuna, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshikshami ma shucha. Bhagavad Gita 18:66. O Arjuna, completely giving up all temporary duties like prescribed worldly duties and prescribed Vedic duties, you should take shelter solely of me. Do not worry, I will liberate you from all sins that arise from your abandoning your prescribed religious duties. In Priti Sandarbha, Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī writes, Bhakti cannot tolerate mixing with other practices like jnana and karma. In bestowing prema, which is the fruit of bhakti, the assistance of karma, jnana, etc. is certainly not needed. Rather, the mere fragrance of bhakti or a semblance of bhakti easily grants the cherished results of karma, jnana, yoga, and so on. Shri Krishna says to Uddhava, Yat karmabhir yat tapasa jnana vairagyatascha yat yogena dana dharmena shreyobhir tarerapi. Sarvam mad bhakti yogena mad bhakto labhate anjasa Swarga pavargam madhama katha anchit yadi vanchati. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11:20-32 and 33. Through bhakti yoga, my bhakta effortlessly attains that which is to be gained by the practices of pious action, that is karma, austerity, that is tapasya, knowledge, that is jnana, renunciation, that is vairagya, mystic perfection, that is yoga, religious charity, that is dana dharma, pilgrimage to holy places, tirtha yatra, or saintly vows, or vrata. Although my bhaktas do not desire anything apart from serving me, still, under certain special circumstances, if they so desire, they can easily attain heaven, liberation, or even my abode. On the other hand, karma, tapasya, jnana, etc. are all fruitless without bhakti. 5. C. The futility of any practice devoid of bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. For a person devoid of bhakti, his high birth, scriptural learning, the uttering of mantras, and austerities are like decorations on a corpse. They are useless. Such external practices are performed only for the sake of delighting the minds of common people. Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya 3:11. In other words, although all these attributes are externally capable of attracting the attention of an ignorant person, they are actually incapable of granting any fruit. Therefore, to become fruitful or full of life, they must accept subordination to supremely glorious Bhakti Devi. This means that without bhakti, a man's birth in high dynasty, scriptural knowledge, chanting of mantras, austerity, and so forth are all fruitless. Just as the body is subordinate to the life airs or prana, so jnana, japa, tapa, yoga, etc. are subordinate to bhakti. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Hari Bhakti Sudodaya 3.11 states, Bhagavad Bhakti Hinasya Jati Shastram Japastapaha Apranasya Dehasya Mandanam Lokaranjanam. For those devoid of Bhagavad Bhakti, high birth in the Brahmin class, erudition in Vedic and other scriptural texts, self-discipline and austerity are just like decorating a corpse with fine clothes and ornaments for the satisfaction of worldly people. These scriptural statements convey the futility of practices that are devoid of bhakti. Whatever fruit is to be obtained through observance of these practices is obtained only by bhakti's assistance. It is to be understood that the practices of japa, tapasya and so on are indeed subordinate to the incomparably greater Bhakti Devi, just as the body is subordinate to the life airs. 5d. In the performance of bhakti, considerations such as purity of time and place are not required. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. In performing karma yoga, meaning the various ceremonial activities related to karma kanda or Vedic fruitive acts aimed at one's own enjoyment, there are requirements regarding purity of time, place, recipient, ingredients, ceremonial formalities, and so on. This is specifically seen in the Smriti Shastras related to such activities, but there are no such regulations for bhakti. O hunter, in carrying out Sri Harinama Kirtan, there is no consideration of place. Even if someone has food remaining in his mouth or is in an impure state, Nam Kirtan is not prohibited. Vishnu Dharmottara. Furthermore, even reliance on what is normally a prerequisite, such as Shraddha, is unnecessary in bhakti. O best of the Bhrigu dynasty, if a person even once utters the name of Krishna without offense, be it with faith or indifference, that chanting will deliver him from the bondage of material existence. Skanda Purana. What more can I say? In the performance of bhakti, even one's personal purification is of no concern. In whatever manner the holy name is pronounced, clearly or unclearly, uttering it without interruption delivers a person. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Another consideration is that while such practices as karma and jnana rely upon place, time, recipient, ingredients, ceremonial formalities, purity, and other considerations, the practice of bhakti does not. Anybody, in whatever place they may be, at any time, and in any condition, can do Hari Bhajan. This is well established in Vaishnava Smriti. Na desha niyamas tasmin, na kala niyamas tatha, na uchishtado nishedho asti, Shri Harir Namni Lupthaka. Vishnu Dharmottar, quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas 11.408. O hunter, the indescribable greatness of Harinama, in such that its performance is not restricted by place or time. It can be chanted even when a person has food in his mouth and on his hands. In any condition, whether pure or contaminated, there is never any prohibition on the performance of Nam Sankirtan. Bhakti does not rely on anything to bestow her own complete perfection. For this reason, it has been said, Sakrit api parigitam shraddhaya heleyava bhriguvar narmatram taryet krishnanam. Skanda Purana. O best of Bhrigus, upon being uttered one time, whether with faith or impulsively, The holy name of Sri Krishna delivers a man from all suffering. The commentary on this verse quoted in Hari Bhakti Vilas states, the purport is that the primary fruit of chanting the holy name of Sri Krishna is Krishna Prema. Therefore, whoever performs kirtan of his name one time in any manner most certainly obtains liberation or moksha, which is Krishna Kirtan's inherent, concomitant fruit. It should be understood that the purport of the component pari in the word parigitam is that one obtains this result even upon indistinctly or incompletely uttering Nama. 5e. In Karma Yoga, errors in the utterance of mantras give rise to immense obstacles. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. By contrast, both injunctions and prohibitions are present in Karma Yoga, as are stipulations regarding place and time. Transgressing these considerations generates severe anarthas, as stated in the scriptures. If during the performance of a yajna, that is oblations offered into fire, or other rituals, a mistake is committed in articulating a particular mantra's acute, grave, or circumflex pitch accents, if any syllable is omitted or if the syllables are not arranged accurately, such incorrect utterance acts as a lightning bolt and utterly ruins the beneficiary of the yajna. Just as Twishta Rishi's incorrect utterance of the syllables Indra Shatru while trying to say, "May the enemies of Indra increase," caused the opposite of the result desired. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. In the practice of bhakti, which is the supremely powerful function of Sri Bhagwan's Swarupa Shakti, there is no consideration of place, time, or recipient, and there is no possibility that the practitioner of bhakti will ever meet with ruination, even if there are flaws in his bhajan. Such is not the case, however, in such practices as karma and jnana. In the performance of karma yoga, the injunctions and prohibitions regarding place, time, or recipient are a consideration. If but a tinge of flaw remains, it causes a great calamity for the executor of that practice, and sometimes even utter ruin will befall him. The activities of Twishta Rishi described in the 6th canto of Śrīmad Bhagavatam serve as evidence of this. Once, having observed Indra's arrogance, Brihaspati, the guru of the demigods, hid for some days in order to teach Indra a lesson. The demoniac race, which is inimical to the demigods, received news that Brihaspati had become exceedingly displeased with Indra and had gone missing. With the help of their own guru, Shukracharya, the demons attacked and effortlessly defeated the demigods, who had become feeble on account of being abandoned by Brihaspati, and they captured the kingdom of heaven. At that time, the demigods took shelter of Brahma, who advised them to appoint Twishta Rishi's son Vishvarupa as their priest, which they did. Vishvarupa presented Nārāyaṇa Kavach to Indra, and in this way, the demigods headed by Indra defeated the demoniac race. Vishvarupa, although the son of the devout sage Twishta, was also related to the demons as their grandson, being the son of a demon's daughter. That is why, at the time of offering oblations, he covertly offered a portion of the sacrifice to the demons. At one point, Indra noticed this, and in his wrath, he killed Vishvarupa. Knowing this, Twishta Rishi set out to perform a sacrifice to bring about the demise of Indra. Uttering the mantra, Indra Shatro Vivardhasva, enemies of Indra, may you increase, he proceeded to offer oblations into the sacrificial fire. There are 3 kinds of pitch accents: Uddat, that is raised, acute accent or high pitch; Anuddat, not raised, grave accent or low pitch; and Swarit, sounded, circumflex or high falling pitch. When articulating the words Indra Shatru Vivardhasva, if the word Indra is anudatta and its articulation abrupt, and if the word Shatru is uddatta, meaning its articulation is prolonged, then the child produced from the effect of uttering the mantra in this manner will kill Indra. By the will of destiny, however, Twista Rishi's articulation of the word Indra was uddatta, high and prolonged, and his articulation of the word Shatru was anuddatta, low and abrupt. Consequently, the meaning of the mantra was reversed. May an offspring be obtained who will be killed by Indra. Thus, Vritrasura was born from the sacrifice, and Indra eventually killed him. Upon there being the most minimal shortcoming, the slightest mistake in articulation, Twista Rishi's sacrifice produced the result he least desired, not the result he cherished. And so, it was that the exact opposite came to pass, for Indra vanquished Vritrasura. However, this is not so on the path of bhakti. Murkho vadati Vishnaya, Dhiro vadati Vishnave, Ubhyostu samam punyam, bhavagrahi janardana. Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Adi Khanda 11.108. One who is inept in Sanskrit grammar intones Vishnaya Namaha when offering obeisance to Lord Vishnu, whereas one who is learned intones Vishnave Namaha. But both achieve equal piety by their offering of obeisance, because the Supreme Lord Sri Janardhan only accepts a person's inner mood. A father is very pleased to hear the broken language of his infant child. In fact, hearing the child's chatter gives the father even more delight than hearing the sophisticated language of his elder son. Similarly, in bhakti, even if a devotee's articulation of hymns and prayers in praise of Bhagwan lacks clarity, bhavagrahi janardana, he accepts only loving sentiments, understands the internal feelings of the devotee, and is delighted. Such is not the case, however, with sacrifices or yagnas composed entirely of fruitive acts. By the slightest imperfection in Twista Rishi's articulation, the result was reversed. Thus, Bhakti Yoga has a speciality that makes it vastly different from Karma Yoga. For the activities of Karma Yoga, such as the ceremonial offering of oblations into the sacrificial fire, as well as the sacrifices themselves, are dependent on faultless and pure performance. 5F. Jnana Yoga is subservient to karma, and the slightest deviation is condemned. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. Similarly, it is well known that one who takes shelter of Jnana Yoga is dependent on purity of mind. Without purity of mind, Jnana Yoga will bear no fruit. Only upon the mind being purified through Nishkama Karma Yoga, pious action devoid of fruitive desire, does one become eligible to enter the path of Jnana Yoga. Therefore, it is seen that Jnana Yoga is dependent on karma. Furthermore, it is also seen that Shastra repeatedly condemns as a shameless vomit eater any practitioner of Jnana Yoga who, by chance, misbehaves even slightly. Shastra states, if a person renounces the sannyasa ashrama, which is the perfection of three varga, that is, religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and again enters household life, he is called Vantashi, a shameless person who eats his own vomit. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 7:15-36. It is seen in relevant scriptural contexts that, although Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, and the like were engaged in the cultivation of jnana, they were widely criticized. Because they did not possess even a trace of true jnana, sadhus do not sanction even the slightest misconduct in the practitioners of jnana. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Jnana yoga also is essentially dependent on purity of mind. Such is the assertion of the revealed scriptures. The practice of jnana will not be successful as long as the mind remains impure. Hence, the eligibility for the initiation into jnana yoga arises only when one achieves purity of mind through nishkama karma yoga or selflessly performing pious action. In this way, jnana yoga is dependent on karma also. In Bhagavad Gita 3.19, Shri Krishna says, Tasmad asaktah satatam karyam karma samachara asakto hi acharan karma param apnoti purushaha. O Arjuna, without attachment, that is, being devoid of the craving to gain the fruits of action, always perform your prescribed duties. By performing those duties in a detached manner, the consciousness becomes pure. Only when the consciousness is pure will one become eligible to cultivate jnana. Thereafter, one attains salvation or mukti. The purport is that as soon as there is a slightest imperfection or corruption in the sadhaka's execution of karma, jnana and so on, their lives, both in this world and the next, are ruined to such an extent that those sadhakas become utterly vanquished. However, on the path of bhakti, as soon as para-bhakti or transcendental devotion enters the heart, which may happen even while faults like lust, anger, and depravity remain present there, any faults are dispelled by the mercy of bhakti. Nonetheless, sadhakas should always make an active effort to abstain from bad behavior. It is completely inappropriate to engage in immoral acts while performing bhakti. By doing so, Bhakti Devi conceals herself. This implies that criticism of the sadhak bhaktas is not found in Shastra, even if poor behavior surfaces in their present life due to misdeeds committed in the former lives, or even if traits arise that are governed by the impressions from former lives. This is because Bhakti Devi manifests in the heart of non-duplicitous practitioners of bhakti and instantly purifies their mind and consciousness. On the other hand, saintly persons do not approve of the slightest kind of ill behavior in the practitioners of jnana. For instance, although Kansa, Hiranyakashipu, Ravan and the like were in fact greatly knowledgeable, because of their depravity they are denounced everywhere. They are referred to as demons. Text 5, Part G. The eradication of lust, the disease of the heart through bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. It is apparent that a person has admission to the path of bhakti even when faults like lust remain. We learn from Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:33-39. Vikriditam vraj vadubhir. A person who, with full faith, hears about and narrates the all-pervading Sri Krishna's transcendental pastimes, such as his Rasa Leela with the damsels of Vraja, quickly gains transcendental devotion, that is para-bhakti, to him. And, concurrently, being sober, or in other words, being in control of his senses, that person is very soon able to elevate himself of lust, the disease of the heart. In this shloka, the use of the suffix katva refers to the word pratilabhya, which means after attaining bhakti. In Sanskrit grammar, this is a non-terminating verb. The purport is that even while the disease of the heart, meaning lust and the like, still remains, one is eligible to hear and chant about pastimes of rasa. The point being that after such hearing and reciting, para-bhakti appears in the heart, and then, by the influence of that supremely independent bhakti, the diseases of the heart, headed by lust, are indeed dispelled. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. On account of the emergence of faults headed by lust, the practitioner of karma, yoga or jnana, as well as the person who is eligible to practice them, is criticized in every way and meets with complete ruination. On the path of bhakti, however, there is no possibility of this. Rather, a person is eligible for bhakti even while faults like lust remain in him. As he begins to perform the limbs of devotion, the supremely independent Bhakti Devi manifests in his heart, and all his faults are soon vanquished. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura is herein propounding the above-mentioned principle with evidence from preeminent scriptures. In the awakening of bhakti, the primary stage is śraddha, and after that, rati, the sprout of prema. By listening to the narrations of the pastimes of Bhagwan from the mouths of enlightened personalities, either śraddha or rati arises, depending on the previous samskaras of the listener. The essence of all Bhagwan's rasa-laden pastimes is rasa lila. After narrating that incomparably sacred pastime, Śrīla Śukadeva Gosvāmī revealed the fruit of hearing and describing it. Vikriditam vrajvadubhir idam cha Vishnuho Shraddhanvito anushrunuyadat varnayed yaha Bhaktim param bhagvati pratilabhya kama Hridarogam ashvapahinotya chirena dhiraha. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:33-40. A sober person who, with full faith, continuously hears or describes Bhagwan Sri Krishna's transcendental Rasa Leela with the damsels of Vraja will first attain transcendental devotion to the lotus feet of Bhagwan. Thereafter, he will quickly conquer his senses and become forever free from the disease of the heart, that is, worldly lust. As already mentioned, the intended meaning of this verse is that by incessantly and faithfully hearing and reciting Sri Krishna's Ras Leela with the Vraj Gopis, one obtains parabhakti, whereby the diseases of the heart headed by lust will disappear quite rapidly. In this verse, the terminating verb in the phrase kamam hridarogam ashva apahanoti, that is, lust, the disease of the heart, is totally given up quite rapidly, is used after the non-terminating verb within the phrase bhaktim param bhagvati pratilabhyaha, that is, gaining parabhakti for Bhagwan Sri Krishna. By this, the following point is understood. Parabhakti or bhakti, characterized by prema, is obtained even while lust remains. Thereafter, by the influence of that parabhakti, which is supremely independent and extremely powerful, the disease of the heart, meaning lust or material desires, is destroyed. In his Laghu Vaishnav Toshni commentary on this Bhagavatam verse 10:33-39, Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī has written, "It is universal principle that first the disease of the heart or the impetus to engage in sense gratification is destroyed through sadhan, and then the desired object or sadhya vastu is obtained. But it is stated above that parabhakti is obtained even while the disease of the heart, lust, remains. It has thereby been pointed out that hearing and reciting Rasa Leela with deep faith is the incomparably powerful sadhan for obtaining parabhakti. Here, parabhakti is to be understood as none other than Gopi Prema, the topmost expression of prema." Text 5, Part H. Shastra does not criticize even a depraved person in his performance of bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. Furthermore, although lust and so forth sometimes persist even while one performs sadhan bhajan, still api chetasu duracharo bhajate mam, a person may be extremely depraved, but if he performs bhajan of me exclusively, he is certainly a sadhu. Bhagavad Gita 9:30. Also, Badhyamano api madbhaktaha. Even if my bhakta, due to uncontrolled senses, is attracted to sense objects because of the predominance of bhakti, he is never overwhelmed by those objects. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11:14-18. According to these and other evidential statements of scripture, even when bhaktas remain in a state of depravity, not even a slight trace of criticism of them is found anywhere. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Not to speak of the disease of the heart continuing, meaning that lust is still present there, one never even hears criticism in Shastra of an extremely degraded individual who is on the path of bhakti and performing one-pointed bhajan. Not even criticism of his bhajan is heard. This is clearly evident in the statements of Bhagavad Gita. Api chetasu duracharo bhajate ma mananya bhag sadhureva samantavyaha samyak vyavasito hi saha. 9:30. Swayam Bhagwan Shri Krishna says, O Arjuna, whoever performs bhajan of me with one-pointed consciousness, even if he is extremely ill-behaved, should be considered a sadhu or saint, since his endeavor with perseverance and care is highly saintly. That person who does not worship any demigod or goddess, but only worships me, who does not perform jnana, karma, yoga, etc., but only performs bhakti to me, and who does not aspire for anything apart from my satisfaction, should, in fact, be acknowledged as a sadhu or a bhakta, even if he is affected by degraded behavior in the form of violence, adultery, theft, and so forth. This is my command. As such, although it is absolutely impossible for such wayward behavior to remain in a person who is resolutely engaged in one-pointed bhajan of me, if it does happen to be observed in him at some point, still he must be acknowledged as a sadhu. The essence of Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura's Śrīla commentary on this Bhagavad Gita verse is that Bhagwan's attachment to the devotees is totally natural. Consequently, even if a devotee is ill-behaved, his bhakta will never be destroyed, and Bhagwan in time will elevate him to an exalted position. It is solely with the aim of clearly expressing this point that this verse has descended to this world. That person who does not worship other gods, who does not accept the shelter of practices like karma and jnana, but only accepts the shelter of bhakti, and who has no longing in his heart besides Sri Krishna's happiness, is an ananya bhakta. As such, even if impressions due to wicked deeds, violence, adultery, theft and so forth, committed in his previous births persist in the bhakta, he is to be understood as saintly. The component mantavyaha, that is, must be considered in this verse, is the edict, that is, the edict of Bhagwan. Not honoring it will prove detrimental. Moreover, not honoring this edict will mean transgressing the words emanating from Bhagwan's divine lotus mouth. Hence, in regard to such ill-behaved individuals, there exists not the slightest bit of room for suspicion regarding their standing as sadhus. At this point, some persons may conjecture, is it not that someone is a sadhu to the degree he does exclusive bhajan of Bhagwan, and not to the degree he acts wickedly, he is not a sadhu? In answer to this, it is said, sadhur eva, that is, by virtue of the word eva, certainly he is never to be conceived of as unsaintly to any degree at all. In fact, he is to be accepted as a sadhu entirely. Moreover, there is another reason why Bhagwan is advocating that he be honored as a sadhu. His intelligence is thoroughly fixed in bhakti to me. In other words, the merit of such a person's resolve is that even if he has to go to hell for his unrelenting sins, he will not give up one-pointed Krishna bhajan at any cost. In essence, although this verse from Bhagavad Gita describes the magnificence of Ananya Bhakti or one-pointed devotion, it is not giving a license for misbehavior. In truth, it is never possible for the hearts of the bhaktas to be inclined toward bad behavior for long. That is why the word api or even has been used at the beginning of the Gita verse. Even if, by chance, such depravity occurs within the conduct of a sādhaka who remains under the control of any bad impressions due to either the activities of his previous births or heinous association, then the supremely independent and very powerful Bhakti Devi removes those ill thoughts from his heart quite swiftly. By the fire of repentance, the heart of that sadhaka rapidly becomes pure. That is why, in the subsequent verse of the Gita, Sri Bhagavan has said, Shipram bhavati dharmatma, shashvachantim nigacchati, kaunteya pratijanihi, na me bhakta pranashyati. Bhagavad Gita 9.31. Arjuna, such a person fixed in bhajan of me swiftly becomes virtuous. He obtains perpetual serenity and never meets with ruination. For this very reason, you can say with solemn assurance that my bhaktas are never ruined. That person who does not deliberate on the statements of Gita or understand their underlying meaning or purport, and who, considering this verse a license, knowingly engages in corrupt acts while doing bhajan, feeling no remorse, has not a fraction of saintliness in him. Furthermore, by habitually committing sinful acts on the strength of the holy name, he commits terrible offenses. This is to be understood as a fact. Only when Sri Nama becomes pleased by his unending performance of Nama Sankirtan, along with his forsaking ill behavior and the like, can his incessant repenting and his experience of intense misery again qualify him as saintly. There is no other way. This point should also be understood in this light. On the path of jnana, a jnani is criticized as long as the slightest depravity remains in him. He is not recognized as a jnani, as Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11:18-40 states. Yastav asanyat shadvargaha prachendendriye sarathihi jnana vairagya rahitas tridandam upjivati. A renunciant who has taken refuge in the path of jnana, but whose mind and senses remain uncontrolled, is devoid of knowledge and renunciation and is impelled by his charioteer-like intelligence. He makes a show of bearing a danda solely for the purpose of maintaining his livelihood. On the other hand, even if a bhakta is badly behaved, he is still considered saintly and criticism of him is not heard. The author substantiates this with the following verse. Badhyamano api madbhakto vishyer ajitendriyaha prayaha pragalbhaya bhaktya vishyer nabhi bhuyate. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11:14-18. Shri Krishna said, O Uddhava, by the influence of the powerful bhakti to me, even my bhaktas who are not completely competent in subduing their senses are not overwhelmed by sense objects. Text 5, Part I. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. The messengers of Vishnu or the Vishnudutas are fully versed in Tattva. In comparison with the Yamadutas, they do not err in ascertaining what is real and unreal. Therefore, what they determine is the truth. They thus establish Ajamil's standing as a bhakta. Although he remained a man of depraved character, out of fondness for his son, he uttered the name Nārāyaṇa, albeit in reference to his own son. Thus, such utterances although a mere semblance or abhasa of Bhagwan's name, reveal the glorious position of Ajamil and others like him as bhaktas, as those who are to be extolled by all. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Even when a mere semblance of bhakti exists in an extremely fallen individual or durachari, his standing as a devotee is not impeded, not to speak of one who is practicing bhakti with serious intensity. An example of this is Ajamila, whose standing as a devotee was confirmed by the Vishnudutas even though he was dissolute. Being overcome by affection for his son, Ajamila uttered Bhagwan's name in reference to his son, since his son's name was Nārāyaṇa. Ajamila was depraved individual, but his standing as a bhakta merely by his uttering a semblance of Bhagwan's name is celebrated through his evidence from the revealed scriptures. Text 5, Part J. Paths such as Karma Yoga are dependent on bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. It is accepted, therefore, that in regard to karma, yoga, and other paths, the mental purity of the practitioner and the purity of the ingredients, place, and so forth are vital to the success of the practice, and any fault, wantonness, etc., in these factors hinders that success. And even if perfectly performed, these disciplines can never bestow any fruit without bhakti, for bhakti alone breathes life into them. Therefore, it can be perceived in every way that disciplines like karma, yoga, and jnana depend on bhakti. There are factors that make these processes successful, and there are factors that hinder their success. These processes are not in themselves independent. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. In this manner, the Siddhanta is firmly established that some factors render practices such as karma, jnana, and yoga effective, and some factors render them defective. Purity of consciousness or chitta and so forth make them effective, and the distortion brought about by desire for enjoyment and the like makes them defective. That practice or sadhana in which effective and defective factors govern its success can never be referred to as dependent on itself only. On the other hand, the practice of bhakti, which is autonomous and very powerful, does not require purity of consciousness and so forth. This is because hearing and chanting can go on even when the heart remains impure, even when lust and so forth remain. The practice of bhakti is not impeded, since alongside the presence of lust, the activities of bhajan, such as hearing and chanting, are performed. Therefore, the sadhana of bhakti is supremely autonomous. There is not even the slightest doubt about this. That which is supremely autonomous is neither made effective or defective by anything at any time. Text 5, Part K. The superiority of bhakti over moksha. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. Only an ignorant person claims that jnana activates bhakti. Shastra indeed determines the supreme eminence of bhakti, even over moksha, which is the ultimate goal of jnana. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 5:6-18 states, Sri Hari may give salokya mukti and so forth to those who perform bhajan of him, but he does not easily bestow prema bhakti yoga. Moreover, it has been said, O great sage, even among hundreds of millions of perfected and liberated personalities, it is extremely rare to find even one bhakta who is dedicated to serving Sri Nārāyaṇa, his mind thus totally serene. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 6:14-5. In Shastra, one encounters numerous statements like these, which conclusively establish bhakti's supremacy over jnana or bhakti's absolute supremacy over mukti, the ultimate fruit of jnana. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Previously, the preeminent author Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura has explained that the practices of karma, jnana, yoga, and so on have the nature of being dependent on something else. Since certain elements render them effective and certain elements render them defective, but that the practice of bhakti is supremely independent or swatantra due to the absence of anything that can render it effective or defective. Ignorant persons, unable to understand the actual imports of Shastra, say that jnana activates bhakti. Refuting the philosophical conclusions of such ignorant persons, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura is establishing the absolute supremacy of bhakti with evidence from scripture. Some people say that jnana activates bhakti. In their opinion, the inclination for bhakti is actually impossible without knowledge of the soul or Atma Tattva, knowledge of the absolute truth or Paratattva, and so on. They explain this by saying that while secondary sadhanas are certainly never required in the presence of bhakti, there is no way to activate bhakti other than by developing jnana. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura, considering such people uninformed, is refuting their ideas and demonstrating the independence of bhakti. An extensive analysis of jnana is now presented. By the word jnana, three branches of knowledge are understood. Tat padartha jnana, meaning knowledge of the absolute truth, Parabrahma or Bhagavad Tattva. B. Tvam padartha jnana, meaning knowledge of the intrinsic spiritual form or swarupa of the living entity. And C. Sambandha jnana, meaning knowledge of the relationship between the absolute truth and the living entity. A. Tat padartha jnana, or knowledge of the intrinsic form of the absolute truth, Sri Krishna, the object of worship. Tat padartha jnana is the transcendental knowledge that Param Brahma Sri Krishna possesses a beautiful form and that he is composed of eternality, cognizance, and bliss, that is, Sat Chit Ananda. It refers to the knowledge of his quality of being Swayam Bhagavana or Param Brahma, even while acting like a human, and of his quality of being the embodiment of the totality of all rasa. It refers to the knowledge of his unlimited beauty, of his unlimited Mādhurya, of his unlimited form, qualities and pastimes, and of his unlimited kindness. It refers to the knowledge of all his other qualities, like his affection for his devotees. It also refers to the knowledge of his holy abode, associates, internal potency or Swarupa Shakti, and external potency or Maya Shakti. B. Tvam padartha jnana, or knowledge of the jiva. Tvam padartha jnana refers to the knowledge of the jiva's qualities of being a particle of consciousness, of emanating from the Tatastha Shakti or the Lord's marginal potency, of being the Lord's separated expansion or Vibhinna Amsha, of being the eternal servant of Sri Krishna, of having a minute degree of independence, and so on. C. Sambandha jnana, or knowledge of the relationship between Bhagwan and the jiva. Sri Krishna, who is the very form of the absolute truth, is the Lord, and the living entity is his eternal servant. Sri Krishna is infinite, and the jiva is infinitesimal. Sri Krishna is the controller of Maya, and the living entity is controlled by Maya. Forgetfulness of Sri Krishna's lotus feet is the sole cause of the living entity's entanglement in Maya and his unending misery, whereas bhajan of Sri Krishna is the sole means of his becoming liberated from Maya and obtaining supreme bliss. Knowledge of all this is referred to as knowledge of the relationship between the Supreme Lord and the living entity, or Sambandha jnana. Some people speak about knowledge of the oneness of absolute reality and the living entity, or Brahma Jiva Ekya Jnana. They do not accept the existence of Parabrahma's potency or Shakti, or the existence of his personal aspect, his beautiful form and varied qualities. According to their conception, absolute reality is without qualities and without form. There is no distinction between the living entity and Brahma, and the Brahma Sayujya Mukti, that is merging in Brahma, is the living entity's ultimate goal. These people are offenders to Bhagwan because they think that the insignificant living entities are the absolute truth and that Parabrahma, Sri Krishna, Sri Rama, and so on, who have transcendental qualities, are but peculiarities of the illusory energy. Knowledge about the oneness of the absolute reality and the living entities averse to bhakti and is therefore to be abandoned entirely. The association of devotees or satsanga is one of the primary limbs of bhakti sadhan. By the mercy of a supremely independent Mahapurusha, the above mentioned three kinds of jnana independently blossom in the heart of the bhakti sadhak. This is because the sādhaka has associated with a Mahapurusha and has heard the Bhagavad Katha that flows ceaselessly from his mouth. If it were possible to be inclined toward the activities of bhakti, such as satsanga and bhajan kriya, by separately obtaining that jnana, then it could be said that jnana activates bhakti. Occasionally, such jnana is somewhat helpful upon once entering the path of bhakti, but it cannot be called the activator of bhakti, since it is not a limb of bhakti or bhajan. Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1, 2, 248 and 249 writes, when knowledge or jnana and renunciation or vairagya are not inharmonious with the path of bhakti, or when they are in fact favorable to bhakti, their usefulness for starting one on the path of bhakti is accepted. But after a person has set off on the path of bhakti, jnana and vairagya are no longer necessary. Hence, they are never limbs of bhakti. According to the conception of Mahapurushas, after one enters the domain of bhakti, the continued practice of jnana and vairagya hardens the heart. Therefore, it is solely bhakti which is so tender that is the cause of entering the domain of bhakti or crossing the threshold to bhakti. That is why it has been said in Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:14-3, Jnane prayasam udupasya namanta eva jivanti sammukharitam bhavadiya vartam sthane sthitaha shruti gatam tanuvang manobhir ye prayasho ajit jito apyasi testri lokyam. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:14-3. Sri Brahma is eulogizing Sri Krishna, O unconquerable one. In this universe, there are those who do not make even a slight separate endeavor to obtain knowledge of your nature and form, your majesty and your greatness. They maintain their existence by staying near your bhaktas and hearing and serving with their body, mind and words the narrations of your names, forms, qualities and pastimes, which automatically flow from your bhaktas' lips. Although you are ordinarily unconquerable, meaning no one in the three worlds can defeat you, you are conquered by such individuals. Therefore, it is only the uninformed who say that jnana activates bhakti. Knowers of the truth do not make this claim because countless scriptures establish bhakti's supreme excellence over even mukti, the ultimate goal of jnana. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura is giving an example of this from Śrīmad Bhagavatam 5:6-18. Rajan patir gururalam bhavatam yadunam devam priha kulpati kvacha kinkaro vaha asat evam anga bhagwan bhajatam mukundo muktim dadati kahirchit smana bhakti yogam. O Parikshit, Bhagwan Mukunda himself was the master, the guru, the worshipful deity, the best friend and the family head of the Pandava and Yadu dynasties. Sometimes he would even act as their obedient servant and become their messenger. The most beneficent Bhagwan may easily give mukti to those dedicated to attaining his favor, but he rarely gives prema bhakti. In a sense, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura writes in his Sārartha-darshini commentary on this verse that Mahārāja Parikshit felt deep sorrow at the time of hearing Śrīmad Bhagavatam because he knew that no avatara of Bhagwan had ever appeared in his Puru dynasty. Understanding this, the all-knowing Sri Śukadeva Gosvāmī, in order to demonstrate the superiority of bhakti over mukti, caused this verse to descend. In this way, he dispelled Parikshit Maharaj's sorrow and brought him joy. Śrīla Śukadeva Gosvāmī's intention was to assert that the family in which bhakti, that is, the bhakta, descends is superior to the family in which Bhagwan descends. The family in which bhakti descends is more praiseworthy because Bhagwan is conquered through bhakti alone. It is true that no incarnation of Bhagwan had ever descended in the Puru dynasty, but a bhakta certainly had. Sri Bhagwan is the maintainer of the Pandu dynasty in the same way that he is the maintainer of the Yadu dynasty. He is also their instructor, their object of worship, their best friend, and their leader. He went as far as to act as their messenger, thus becoming their servant. It is never seen that a process other than bhakti can control Bhagwan like this. Such bhakti is extremely rare. Bhagwan may well grant liberation or mukti to those who worship him, which is why one of his names is Mukunda, but he rarely gives prema bhakti. In the verse under discussion, it is not the case that the word karichit or at any time implies that Sri Bhagwan never gives prema bhakti. He does not give it as long as the intense hankering to obtain prema bhakti does not awaken within the heart. In other words, it is all very well that a devotee may be doing bhajan, but if any ambitions apart from serving Krishna remain in his heart, even as a scent, Bhagwan does not bestow prema upon him. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has therefore written in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 8.18 that Krishna jadi chhute bhakte bhukti mukti diya kabho bhakti na dena rakhen lukaiya. As long as the hankering for enjoyment and liberation remain in the heart of the bhaktas engaging in bhajan, Sri Krishna does not give them prema bhakti, rather he conceals it from them. When a child falls ill, an affectionate mother keeps rasgullas, sweet rice, and so on hidden from him. She gives him those things when he is healthy, otherwise not. In the same way, Bhagwan keeps bhakti hidden from unfit bhaktas. It is not normally the case that Sri Krishna does not want to give prema bhakti to his own devotees. This is seen elsewhere in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 22.37. Also, Anya kami jadi kare Krishnera bhajan, na mangileh Krishna tare den svacharan. If those who long for something other than bhakti perform bhajan of Krishna, Sri Krishna grants them service to his divinely graceful feet, even without their asking for it. Some people think that if Sri Krishna can satisfy a devotee simply by giving him sense enjoyment or bhukti, or liberation or mukti, he would never grant him prema bhakti since he becomes controlled by prema bhakti. According to their idea, subservience to the devotees is troublesome for him. In truth, however, prema bhakti is the function of Sri Krishna's ahladani shakti or pleasure potency. Therefore, he derives far more bliss from prema bhakti than from his own intrinsic nature or swarupa. Since his submission to the bhakta is his supreme happiness, he always hankers for it. It is not possible that this quality of submission brings him pain or that he rejects it. This is the definite conclusion of the Bhakti Shastras. Since Bhakti is so superior to Mukti, which is the ultimate goal of Jnana, how can Jnana be the activator of Bhakti? Having refuted the conception that Jnana activates Bhakti and having established the superiority of Bhakti over Mukti, the ultimate goal of Jnana, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura is now establishing the vast superiority of the devotee of Bhagwan over the liberated personality or the Mukta Purusha. King Parikshit said to Śrīla Śukadeva Gosvāmī, Muktanām api siddhānām Nārāyaṇa parāyinaha sudurlabha prashantātma kotishvapi mahamunehe. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 6:14-5. O greatest of sages, among the billions upon billions of those who are emancipated even in this life or Jivan Mukta, and who have nearly attained the liberation of merging into Brahma effulgence or Brahma Sayujya Mukti, only one performs worship of Bhagwan Nārāyaṇa. Such a person whose mind is totally serene and who takes refuge solely in Nārāyaṇa is extremely rare. There may be a few such persons. In his commentary on this verse, Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī has written that a person who is free from identification with the mortal body in which he resides should be understood as liberated, a Jivan Mukta Purusha. But to achieve Brahma Sayujya Mukti, even a Jivan Mukta Purusha must wait until the fruits of his action or aparādha are destroyed. By Brahma Jnana alone, the fruits of a Jnani's action cannot be destroyed. The reason for this is as follows. Brahma Jnana is attained by the wisdom to discern spirit from non-spirit. By the fruit of this wisdom, his heart becomes pure and he obtains knowledge of the undifferentiated spirit or Abheda Brahma, whereby the Jiva has a conception of the oneness with Brahma. Although some knowledge of the absolute reality's special quality does dwell in this undifferentiated Brahma Jnana, it does not lead to any activity in the form of worship or service. Hence, no potency of the Supreme Lord manifests in the sadhaka's body by which the sadhaka's unsurmountable prarabdha can be destroyed. Therefore, even upon acquiring Brahma Jnana, meaning even after an enormous portion of the sadhaka's unlimited mass of accumulated seeds of sin or bija, the tendency to sin or kuta and so forth have been destroyed. The sadhaka must still wait for the prarabdha that resulted in his present body to be destroyed before he attains Sayujya Mukti. Such sadhakas are referred to as Jivan Mukta or liberated in this life. Even while their mortal body persists, such Mukta Purushas retain no identification with their body. The word Siddhanam should be understood to mean those who have nearly attained liberation. A devotee of Nārāyaṇa, that is, a devotee who is free from any ambition apart from the desire to serve Sri Nārāyaṇa, is rarer than billions upon billions of such liberated personalities or Jivan Muktas and perfected personalities or Siddha Purushas. This is because the mind of such a bhakta is serene or free from all forms of disturbance. Here, one may ask the following question: what disturbance can possibly remain for a perfected personality or one who is liberated in this life? Scripture states that upon offending the inconceivably powerful lotus feet of Sri Bhagwan, even such individuals will again become enraptured by worldliness or samsara. Jivan mukta api punar bandhanam yanti karmabhihi yadya chint mahasaktau bhagvatya aparādhinaha. Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī's Laghu Toshni commentary on Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10:2-32. Even if a person is liberated in this life, he again becomes bound to worldliness, being addicted to material desires because of offenses to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Śrīmad Mahaprabhu is instructed Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī, Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ataiv Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakalai Ashanta. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 19.149. Since a devotee of Krishna is free from all material desires, he is peaceful. Those who desire material enjoyment, liberation from worldliness and mystic perfections are restless. Devotees of Bhagwan are therefore far superior to those who have perfected jnana. Even one who delights in the featureless aspect of the Absolute gives up the path of jnana and begins to perform Hari Bhajan upon attaining the slightest taste for bhakti. Brahmanand haite Puranand Leela Ras Brahma Jnani Ācārya Kare Atmavash. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrit Madhya Leela 17.137. The rasa of Sri Krishna's pastime, which is replete with transcendental happiness, allures the jnani absorbed in realization of Brahma and completely conquers him. For those who have not tasted an iota of bhakti, the bliss of the featureless aspect of the Absolute appears to be great happiness. But in Śrīmad Bhagavatam, it is stated, Atmaramas chamunyo nirgrantha apya urukrame kurvantya ahetu kim bhaktim ittham bhuta guno hari. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 1:7-10. Even Munis, who were deeply absorbed in contemplating Brahma and immersed in the delight of realizing Brahma, although already liberated from anger and false ego, performed costless devotional service to Bhagavan. This is because Bhagwan's qualities are so full of Madhurya and indescribable charm that they attract everyone to him. In Lalit Madhav Natak 5.2, it has also been written, Riddha Siddhi Vraj Vijayata Satya Dharma Samadhir Brahma Nando Gururapi Chamatkar Yatyev Tavat Yavat Premna Madhu Ripu Vashikar Siddhaushadhinam Gandho Apyantaha Karan Sarni Panthatam Na Prayati. Inherently, prema is the perfect elixir to bring Sri Krishna under one's control. As such, as long as there is no trace of prema within the core of the heart, flourishing material mystic perfections or siddhis, beginning with the ability to become smaller than an atom or anima, seem most exalted, and samadhi or trance, the fruit of practicing dharmas beginning with the truthfulness, as well as the great happiness of realizing Brahma, can produce astonishment within one's heart. It has, therefore, been established conclusively that the excellence of the bhaktas is millions upon millions of times greater than the liberated personalities or mukta purushas. In his teachings to Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī, Śrīmad Mahaprabhu presented a gradation of excellence. Eit Brahmand Bhari Anant Jeevgan 84 laksh yonite karye Brahman Tare Madhye Sthavar Jangam Dui Bhed Jangame Tiryak Jal Sthalachar Vibhed Tar Madhye Manushya Jati Ati Alpatar Tar Madhye Malech Pulind Bodh Shabar Vedanisht Madhye Ardhaik Ved Mukhe Mane Vede Nishiddh Paap Kare धर्म नाही गणे धर्माचारी मध्य बहुत कर्मनिष्ठ कोटि कर्मनिष्ठ मध्य एक ज्ञानी श्रेष्ठ कोटि ज्ञानी मध्य होय एक जन मुक्त कोटि मुक्त मध्य दुर्लभ एक कृष्ण भक्त. श्री चैतन्य चरितामृता मध्य लीला 19.138, 144 to 148. This universe is teeming with countless billions of living entities which are of two kinds. Those that cannot move about or sthavara, such as trees, and those that can move about, jangama, such as humans, birds, and animals. Among the 8.4 million species of living entities, which include aquatic life, beasts, and so on, there are very few kinds of human beings. And even among humankind, there are races and groups like Malechas or uncivilized persons, Pulindas or primitive clans, Buddhists and Shavars or mountain tribesmen, who do not abide by the Vedas. Among the remaining members of humankind who do acknowledge the Vedas, half pay lip service to them but fail to carry out the injunctions of the Vedas in regard to dharma or religion, karma or prescribed occupational duties, and so on. Rather, they engage in sinful acts opposed to Vedas. Among the remaining people who do undertake the practice of Veda Dharma, most are intent on performing karma or fruitive activities such as yagnas. Among tens of millions of such humans who are devoted to karma, there is hardly one jnani. And again, among tens of millions of jnanis, it is a rare person indeed who reaches the stage of perfection and becomes free of bodily identification, and so on. Among tens of millions of such liberated persons, one rare individual will happen to be a devotee of Krishna. Among billions of Krishna bhaktas, one will be a true Krishna bhakta whose heart is completely tranquil. In other words, having given up all other desires, such a devotee wants nothing apart from Sri Krishna and service to him. He alone is known as totally serene, being fully dedicated to service Krishna. Those who hanker for material enjoyment or bhukti or liberation, mukti, cannot be considered totally serene. They remain restless, since one who covets bhukti or mukti can never be peaceful. Those who hanker for anima or becoming smaller than an atom and other mystic perfections desire self-satisfaction as well as fame and worship. Without doubt, they always remain dissatisfied. Aspirants for mukti are also, in truth, restless, desiring opulence befitting the transcendental abode. Jivas who obtain Salokya Mukti, Sarishti Mukti, Sarupya Mukti, or Samipya Mukti certainly remain restless. And those who desire Sayucha Mukti, wherein their own existence is not retained, are also regarded as unfulfilled, because while they do not long for personal happiness, they surely long for the cessation of their misery. Being troubled by the anguish of material existence, they engage themselves in sadhana leading to Sayuja Mukti in order to become free of that misery. The sole root of the striving for Sayuja Mukti is the desire to suspend one's own suffering. How can a person be said to be at peace when he longs for the suspension of his unhappiness? Someone may say that the intent to obtain oneness with Brahma is in fact a longing for mukti, not a longing for the suspension of unhappiness. In this case, also, it must be accepted that a person's motive for performing sadhana is a longing for the glory of attaining Brahma. This longing for exaltation also makes the mind restless. The longing to suspend unhappiness or the longing for the glory of attaining identification with Brahma persists until the last stage of sadhana. This is because one who covets Sayuja Mukti cannot have any goal besides this. Therefore, an aspirant for mukti also is not at peace. Furthermore, as long as the living entity has not attained an eternal, continuous, and infinitely varied bliss, and as long as his consciousness has not become thoroughly absorbed in that bliss, his restlessness of mind will not vanish. It is not possible. The living entity can find this bliss only while exclusively relishing the rasa of Bhagwan's pastime through bhakti. The minds of those who have relished such bhakti rasa, or the mellows of devotion, or Leela rasa, or the mellows of Shri Krishna's sweet pastimes, cannot be agitated even by the bliss of identifying with a Brahma or Brahma Ananda. On the other hand, by relishing bhakti, which is full of Leela rasa, the jnanis absorbed in the Brahma Ananda become restless, and a craving arises in them to relish bhakti rasa, to which they are then drawn. Brahma Nande Haite Puranand Leela Rasa, Brahma Jnani Ācārya Kare Atmavasha. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 17.137. This also confirms that the mind of the Brahmajnani can remain steady in Brahmananda only as long as the topics consisting of the Madhurya of the names, forms, qualities, and pastimes of Bhagwan Shri Krishna, the inexhaustible ocean of Bhakti Rasa, do not enter his ears. Srila Shukadeva Muni and the four Kumaras headed by Sanak are evidence of this point. From the time of their birth, they were totally absorbed in Brahma realization, but drawn by the qualities of Shri Krishna, they became engaged in bhajan. Thus, the possibility remains that even the mind of a Brahmajnani can be restless. It is for this reason that they too have been described as not peaceful. By contrast, the devotee who tastes bhakti rasa has truly forgotten his own self. This is because he eternally serves Shri Krishna and thus relishes the rasa of his pastimes. Consequently, he is not just truly at peace or shanta, but totally serene or prashanta. In other words, he is peaceful to the superlative degree. Text 5, Part L. Jnana is nourished by the mercy of bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. In the above text, bhakti's supreme excellence has been declared. Why then do we see that in certain parts of Shastras, jnana is described as primary? This is now being answered with the following analogy. Although Sri Bhagwan is Sarvashaktiman, the omnipotent and collective reservoir of all transcendental qualities, he made Indra his elder, accepting subservience to him. Bhagwan came in the form of Upendra or Vamana, the younger brother of Indra, and maintained Indra, king of the demigods, in every way. Wise persons understand this as Bhagwan's quality of mercy. It is not at all indicative of his inferiority. Similarly, we should understand from scriptural statements that establish jnana as prominent and bhakti as being merely a supportive limb of jnana, that it is solely to nourish jnana that the supremely independent and transcendental Bhakti Devi, by accepting the mode of goodness, has mercifully become a limb of jnana. Wise and learned persons have ascertained this to be the grace of bhakti. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. It is with highly nuanced deliberation that Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura presents this analysis, in which he firmly establishes the independent nature of Bhakti Devi. A question may arise in regard to those who perform the practice of jnana mixed with bhakti. We find scriptural statements such as Krishna Bhakti Bina Taha Dite Nar Phala. Without the help of bhakti, no practice can bestow its fruit. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 22.18. Accordingly, to attain liberation, which is the fruit of jnana, practitioners of jnana practice bhakti also. In such practice, bhakti is present as a limb of jnana. Jnana is predominant and Bhakti Devi is in a secondary position. How then will the independent nature of bhakti be established? Furthermore, in Śrīmad Bhagavatam, the bhakti of such a jnani is called Satviki Bhakti, or devotion in the mode of goodness. In this case, how will the transcendental or nirguna aspect of bhakti also be proved? The revered author has beautifully reconciled this with an analogy. In the 8th canto of Śrīmad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of Sri Vamanadeva have been described. Despite Sri Vamanadeva's supreme independence, unlimited potencies, and embodying all transcendental qualities by his own free will, he appeared in the form of Sri Upendra, the younger brother of Indra, king of demigods. Only for Indra's benefit did Vamanadeva accept subordination to him. On the pretext of begging 3 steps of land from Mahārāja Bali, Vamanadeva, with his first 2 steps, took possession of the earth and the heavenly planets. And with his 3rd step, he sent Bali Maharaj to the lower planetary systems of Patalaloka. He then gave the kingdom of heaven to Indra and thus maintained him. Sri Vamanadeva accepted the name Upendra by his own free will. He became Indra's younger brother and always offered him the respect due an elder brother. Upendra literally means the smaller Indra, means Indra's younger brother. Would learned persons, upon seeing Bhagwan Upendra maintaining and supporting Indra in this way, actually consider him inferior to Indra? Rather, they understand that they respect Bhagwan Upendra or Vamana gave to Indra, as well as Upendra's efforts to maintain him to be his mercy upon Indra. In this way, his supreme excellence is established, not his inferiority. To the extent the Jivas manifests his full potential by performing sadhan, his quality of being a Jiva, that is, his true consciousness, manifests. In a similar manner, to the extent that the compassion of Sri Bhagwan's descends to the lowly and degraded, Bhagwan's quality of being Bhagwan or his Bhagavata also manifests. In essence, the omnipotent and all-capable Bhagwan protected Indra and maintained him by becoming his younger brother. If we closely examine this pastime, we see that Bhagwan Upendra was simply being compassionate to Indra. Despite being supremely independent, omniscient, and all-capable, Sri Bhagwan, by his own independent nature, became the younger brother of Indra and even took on the name Upendra. In this way, he established Indra's preeminence. By his doing so, Sri Bhagwan is not diminished in any way. Rather, it reveals his bhakta vatsalya, or the quality of being affectionate to his devotee. Similarly, bhakti nourishes jnana, because without taking shelter of bhakti, jnana cannot grant any result. Like Sri Bhagwan himself, his Swarupa Shakti, bhakti, is also supremely compassionate, the one and only cause of attaining either the aspect of the absolute truth that is devoid of qualities or nirvishesha, or the aspect that is replete with all qualities, sarvishesha, is bhakti. Sri Bhagwan states, Bhaktya mam abhijananti, that is, I am understood only by bhakti. Bhagavad Gita 18.55, and Bhaktya aham ekya grahya, or I am achieved only by bhakti. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11:14-21. These and other verses in Śrīmad Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam support this. In this way, by performing the sadhan of jnana but not the sadhan of bhakti, one will only achieve turbulation. For this reason, intelligent jnana sadhakas perform the sadhan of bhakti along with their worship of Nirvishesha Brahma. In such jnana sadhan, the practice of bhakti is accomplished in an auxiliary manner. However, it is solely by the influence of such bhakti that jnana sadhan achieves perfection. It is for this reason that in jnana sadhan, where the worshipper is seen as being non-different from the object of worship, bhakti does not appear in her primary form. Rather, she appears in a secondary form as a limb of jnana. By not manifesting his power of independence, Upendra gave prominence to Indra, and by his own desire, he became secondary. This indicates that Upendra bestowed mercy upon Indra. Likewise, Bhakti Devi, by mercifully and not manifesting her potency of independence and by her own desire, remains in a subordinate position as a limb of jnana, and thus nourishes the practice of jnana. As a result of jnani's practice, bhakti bestows upon him knowledge promoting the oneness of individual soul and Brahma or Brahma Ek Jnana and liberation. Just as Upendra cheated Bali Maharaj and bequeathed the heavenly planets to Indra, similarly, the most compassionate Bhakti Devi, despite being the function of Bhagwan Swarupa Shakti and despite being nirguna or beyond all material qualities, mercifully and by her own independent desire adopts the mode of goodness or sattva-guna in order to make the jnani's practice of jnana complete. In Śrīmad Bhagavatam, this type of bhakti has been called Sattviki Bhakti. Again, one may ask, this absolute truth has two manifestations or aspects. One is Savishesha, the personal aspect or Bhagwan himself, and the other is Nirvishesha, the impersonal aspect, devoid of any variety, or Brahma. The Nirvishesh Swarupa of Supreme Absolute Truth is also transcendental or beyond the modes of nature. Why then would bhakti have to adopt the material quality of goodness in order to grant someone realization of this impersonal aspect, which is itself devoid of material qualities? Can bhakti, who is free from material qualities, not give realization of Nirvishesha Brahma while remaining in her own Swarupa? In answer, it is said that bhakti is the name of one of Bhagwan's Shaktis. The term Shakti indicates the capacity to act or accomplish. The Shakti that manifests the Supreme Absolute Truth or Para Tattva is called Bhakti. Bhakti Devi, who is beyond all material qualities, reveals the Swarupa of Bhagwan to the practitioners of Bhakti, who are free from any material desires and beyond the modes of material nature. However, the desire for liberation remains in the heart of jnani sādhakas. Unless one's heart is devoid of any material desire, Bhakti Devi, in her transcendental Swarupa, cannot awaken there. Because of the thorn-like desire for liberation in the heart of the jnanis, that is, because their heart is full of material desires and affected by the modes of material nature, Bhakti Devi adopts the mode of goodness and appears in their hearts to fulfill their desires. There is no other way for them to attain perfection in their respective practices. The mode of goodness illuminates, the mode of passion exhilarates, and the mode of ignorance covers. Although the mode of goodness does not reveal the transcendental supreme absolute reality, it certainly gives a conception of the supreme absolute reality. In regard to bhakti, in the mode of goodness, Bhagwan Kapiladeva says in Śrīmad Bhagavatam 3:29-10, Karma nirharam uddishya parasmin va tadarpanam yajed yashtavyam iti va prithak bhavaha sa sattvikaha. When a person offers the results of his action to Bhagwan with the purpose of freeing himself from the effect of fruitive action and thus attaining liberation, or when he performs devotion to Bhagwan with desires other than to satisfy him, simply out of a sense of duty to him, his devotion is in the mode of goodness, Sattviki Bhakti. In order to please Bhagwan, many offer him the fruit of their pious action or karma, desiring to become free from the results of karma or achieve liberation, since without pleasing Bhagwan, one does not accomplish either. Bhakti indeed bestows the fruit of karma, yoga and jnana. Without the mercy of Bhagwan or bhakti, karma, yoga and jnana are unable to bestow their fruits. When bhakti is performed with an interest other than pleasing Sri Krishna, it is not Śuddha-bhakti. Shastra instructs us to worship Bhagwan. Therefore, so many perform bhajan solely out of a sense of duty, not in full knowledge of bhakti tattva. Their bhajan is not aimed at attaining bhakti, nor is it for the pleasure of Bhagwan. For this reason, their bhakti is not nirguna or beyond the modes of material nature. It is known as sattviki bhakti, devotion in the mode of goodness. This above mentioned Bhagavatam verse states that bhakti grants liberation. Therefore, Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī Pad has said, Kaivalya Kama Sattviki, that is, the desire to become one with Brahma is of the nature of goodness. Thus, it is apparent that the sadhan to achieve liberation is devotion in the mode of goodness, since jnana on its own is unable to grant liberation. Text 6. Part A. Bhakti arises from Bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. Bhaktya sanjayatya bhaktya. Bhakti arises from Bhakti. According to these words of Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11.331, the fruit of sadhan bhakti is prema bhakti. Prema is the crest jewel of all spiritual attainments. Thus, like Bhagwan, his splendid eternal potency, Bhakti Devi is omnipresent, all-controlling, all-nourishing, all-attractive, supremely independent, and self-manifesting. These qualities have been briefly noted here. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura, citing evidence from Śrīmad Bhagavatam, Śrīmad Bhagavad Gita, and other scriptures, has firmly established the self-manifesting, independent nature of bhakti, along with her other characteristics, and is thus concluding the first shava. It has been stated previously that it is by the mercy of any supremely independent, great saintly personality or Mahapurusha that one attains bhakti. Bhakti Devi, who is situated in the heart of the Mahapurusha, is the sole cause of that mercy, for without bhakti, mercy cannot arise. Consequently, bhakti is the cause of bhakti. By determining this, the independent and self-manifesting nature of bhakti has been proven. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 11.331 directly establishes how bhakti is the sole cause of bhakti. Smarantaha smaryantascha mitho aghog haram harim bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya bibhratya utpulakam tanu. Sri Prabhupada, the best of the 9 Yogendras, said to Nimi Maharaj, O King, in this way, it is by Prema Bhakti, which has appeared from Sadhan Bhakti, that the Premi Bhakta, his body shivering in ecstasy and his hair standing on end, remembers Sri Hari and makes others also remember him. In the practice of karma, yoga, jnana and so forth, the means or sadhana differs from the goal or sadhya. The sadhana of fruitive workers or karmis is to offer oblations or yag, performing sacrifice, yagna, and so on, and the goal is the attainment of the heavenly planets. The sadhana of the jnanis includes withdrawal of the mind from sense pleasures or sama, restraint of the senses or dhamma, and profound and repeated meditation or nididhyasana, and their goal is to merge into the impersonal aspect of Supreme Lord or Brahma Sayujya. The sadhana of the yogis is restraint or yama, observing prohibitions or niyama, discipline of the body or asana, breathing exercises or pranayama, and so forth, and the goal is to merge with Paramatma or Paramatma Sayujya. To the degree that these various practitioners approach perfection, their practice reduces. Finally, they rid themselves of their burdensome practice altogether and become absorbed in its perfection. Thus, their practice or sadhan and their perfection or sadhya are entirely distinct from each other. This can be easily understood. By contrast, sadhan bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti are the comparative and superlative stages of the same practice. The previous stage of bhakti becomes the cause of the next stage of bhakti. Therefore, as the practitioner of bhakti progresses towards prema bhakti, his practice augments. It does not end. This is because, in the stage of sadhana bhakti, his taste for devotion has not yet solidified. At the stage of bhava and prema, however, that taste becomes extremely condensed. Śrīla Narottam Das Thakur has said, Pakile se prema bhakti, apakve sadhan riti, bhakti lakshan tattva sar. Prem Bhakti Chandrika 5.8. Prema bhakti is when love for Krishna is fully mature or ripe, and sadhana bhakti is the same devotion that has not yet ripened. This is the essence of the characteristics of bhakti tattva. Just as a mango is sour when unripe and extremely relishable when ripe, prema matures sequentially through many stages known as sneha, man, pranay, rag and anurag, and finally mahabhav. These are the various stages of the development or transformations of prema. Prema itself, without abandoning the sweet qualities of the previous stages, becomes condensed or more relishable as it attains the higher states of sneha, man, pranay, and so on. The highest stage of prema is called mahabhava, and this is present only within Vrajagopis. That bhakti in which there is no other desire than to give happiness to Sri Krishna is called Uttama Bhakti. Uttama Bhakti is of three types: Sadhan Bhakti, Bhav Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. Here, there is another matter worth considering. According to the philosophy of Sankhya, during an activity, the ingredient cause or upadana karan abandons its previous condition and transforms into its effect. By way of analogy, when milk, the ingredient cause, transforms into yogurt, it abandons its previous state. One can no longer find milk in that yogurt. The following question may then be raised. By use of the word transformation, here, are we to consider that this phenomena occurs in bhakti also? In other words, when bhava bhakti or rati transforms into prema bhakti, does bhava bhakti cease to exist? When prema bhakti transforms into sneha, does the stage or the characteristics of prema bhakti disappear? When sneha transforms into pranay, does the previous qualities of sneha cease to exist? In response to this doubt, Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī states that this principle does not hold true for bhakti. Rati is the special function of Sri Krishna's Ahladani Shakti. By the power of Sri Krishna's inconceivable potency or Achintya Shakti, Rati progresses to its higher stages without abandoning its previous stage. Just as sadhan bhakti is comprised of Shravan, Kirtan and other limbs of devotion, so those same limbs exist in bhava bhakti and prema bhakti as well. Similarly, bhava bhakti transforms into prema bhakti without abandoning its previous stage. This prema bhakti is the crest jewel of all spiritual attainments or purushartha, that which is valuable or desirable or artha for the soul, purusha, is called purushartha. In this world, although the jivas have different objects of desire for everyone, the common root is the desire for happiness or bliss. Bhakti, the special function of Sri Bhagwan's Ahladani Shakti, drowns the jivas in the ocean of nectarous bliss. In contrast with bhakti, even the happiness of merging with Brahma or Brahmananda is considered exceedingly insignificant, not to speak of material happiness and comforts or the happiness of the heavenly planets. Like Bhagwan, his great potency Bhakti Devi, who originates from his Swarupa, is all-pervading. Anyone can perform Hari Bhajan anywhere, at any time and in any condition. Therefore, that Bhakti Devi also pervades unlimited universes, the spiritual Vaikuntha planets, Goloka and other dhamas. Like Sri Bhagwan, Bhakti has the quality of being able to control everyone. Not to speak of others, even liberated souls are attracted by her quality of extraordinary affection and begin to perform Hari Bhajan. Mukta api lilaya vigraham kritva bhagvantam bhajte. Śrīla Sridhar Swami's commentary on Śrīmad Bhagavatam. Even a liberated soul is attracted to the pastimes of Krishna. Attaining his spiritual form, he enters the pastimes of Bhagwan to render service to him. Previously, it has been said that without the help of Bhakti Devi, karma, jnana, yoga, tapasya, and so forth cannot bestow the fruits of their practice. Therefore, by comparing bhakti with all other practices or sadhana and their respective goals or sadhya, bhakti's supreme excellence, independence, self-manifesting nature, and so on have been established. Now Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura is stating that bhakti is a notion of all good qualities, and he has described some of the glories of the intrinsic nature or swarupa of bhakti. At the beginning of his instructions to Śrīla Rūpa Gosvāmī, Śrīmad Mahaprabhu says, Para par shunya gabhir bhakti ras sindhu, to maya chakhite tar kahi ek bindu. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 19.137. The ocean of bhakti rasa is without shore and extremely deep. To give you a taste of one drop from that ocean, I am describing some of it. Text 6, Part B. One with mature intelligence is inclined toward bhakti. Sanskrit Bhāvānuvāda. That said, if we see that a person retains any inclination toward processes other than bhakti, then we should understand that his intelligence has not fully matured. Shastra states, except for a non-human or a foolish animal, there is no one who does not perform loving devotional service to Sri Bhagwan. This and various other scriptural statements evidence a living entity's degradation even after attaining a human birth. Thus ends the Bhāvānuvāda of the first shower of nectar named Bhaktehe Sarvotkarshaha, or preeminence of bhakti. Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti. If the glories of bhakti are extremely astonishing and matchless, then it is indeed appropriate for all the jivas to make attaining bhakti the sole purpose of their life. Therefore, if attaining bhakti is not a jiva's goal, it is certain that he has not carefully pondered any bona fide scripture. His intelligence has not matured, and his capacity to deliberate has not developed. For this reason, it is said that such jivas lack the power of discrimination. It should be understood that they are not yet on the human platform. In other words, despite possessing a human-like form, they actually have the nature of animals. This is not simply the author's personal opinion. He is establishing this statement on the basis of scriptural evidence. Puman virjayet vina pashubhnat. Except for those who possess animalistic propensities, who will not perform bhajan of Sri Bhagwan, who is endowed with unlimited transcendental qualities. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 10.1.4. Śrīmad Bhagavatam 2.3.18 and 19 describes those who are averse to Sri Bhajan as dull or animalistic. Tarvaha kim na jivanti, bhastraha kim na shwasantyuta, na khadanti na mehanti, kim grame pashvo pare. Shva vidvarha ushtrukhare, sanstutaha purusha pashu, na yat karno patho peto, jatunam gadagrajaha. The purport of these verses is that those who have obtained a human form in this world and who do not perform Hari Bhajan have simply wasted their life. If one claims that a long life is the measure of a successful life, then one may ask, does not a tree live long? A tree lives for many scores of years, but if longevity is the mark of a successful life, then trees are significantly superior to humans. To this, some may argue that although a tree lives long, it cannot breathe like a human. In answer, it may be said that if inhaling and exhaling is the measure of a successful life, then the bellows of a blacksmith are superior to a human, as they can breathe in and out more than humans do. If one then contends that bellows cannot compare to a human's eating or mating, then in response it may be asked, do village animals like cows, buffaloes, goats, dogs, pigs, donkeys and camels not eat and mate? It can thus be concluded that success of human life lies only in performing Hari Bhajan, which is not possible for those in other species of life. In his commentary, Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī, while explaining the Pāṣavo Pare portion of the above verse, has written that it is understood that humans averse to Hari Bhajan are actually human-like animals. This is indicated by use of the word apare. Some may say that in this world there are those who are averse to Hari Bhajan, but who are nonetheless scholars or heads of nations and praised widely. Can we not regard at least such individuals as humans? In answer to this, it is said that those who are averse to Hari Bhajan and whose ears have never heard the name of Bhagwan are like dogs that bark uselessly, camels that eat thorns, hogs that devour stool, or donkeys that bear a heavy load while being kicked by a she-donkey. Such persons, despite being glorified by others who are also averse to Hari Bhajan, should be understood to be like animals. In his commentary on this verse, Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī has said that a person who is averse to Hari Bhajan, who is densely absorbed in sense gratification, who abandons the nectar of Hari Katha, who, like a dog, pursues useless material enjoyment, and who leaves aside the nectar of Sri Hari's name, is accustomed, like a pig, to eat the stool of sense objects. This is just like a camel who abandons soft mango leaves which are likened to bhakti and happily chews the thorns of material sense enjoyment, or like a donkey who happily carries the heavy burden of material existence while being kicked by the hind legs of a she-ass. Such persons who are glorified by others like them are fit to be called topmost among animals, because they are the elite among the brutes. Therefore, for those persons in whom human qualities have begun to blossom, taking shelter of Hari Bhajan or the path of bhakti is imperative. This specifically is what is being established here. Thus ends the Pīyūṣa-varṣiṇī-vṛtti on the first shower of nectar named Bhakti Sarvotkarsha, or the preeminence of bhakti.